So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Partygate. There's a lot to talk about, and it's ridiculous, honestly. It's so ridiculous. And I'm going to air out my frustrations towards the end of the video to save you guys from probably 3 minutes of pain. But we start with this clip from a Tory MP who actually denied making this statement. And it's a bit quiet, the audio, but yeah, you know, this Tory MP denied it, and I think he deleted his tweet. No, he goes, not sure what your sub-editor is saying. Partygate, he was not happy with it, but we go to the clip.
To back a lawbreaker in office.
I certainly am, and I thought
you're content to back a lawbreaker in office. He goes, I certainly am. Let's hear it again.
Again for that.
And you're content to back a lawbreaker in office.
I certainly am, and I think the Prime Minister's got many achievements.
Many achievements, like law breaking. It's just madness, and that's what we start off with. A damning new Partygate photo of number 10 gathering shows the bar is open. How many drinks do you need for a work event, and whatever else they've got here. You know, my understanding, according to Pippa, is works for the Mirror, is that neither Sue Gray nor the Met Police have investigated this boozy do, even though 30 to 40 staff were present and WhatsApp messages show it was pre-planned. Certain events weren't. I'm not going to malign Sue Gray for her the work that she's done purely because this isn't her job. Like, she should never have been put in this position to ultimately investigate her senior. Never should have happened. I do blame the Met for not looking at the ABBA party though. I definitely blame them. We go more, the best lie of the day, which is this one from Grant Shapps.
Recalling in context that throughout this period, the Prime Minister himself had been seriously ill, had a close brush with coronavirus. He lost his mum during the period he's dealing with the...
He lost his mum, so apparently that's not the case. His mum, Boris Johnson's mum, died 10 months after the party. So unless Johnson can see the future and saw his mum was going to die and therefore did not party, that simply doesn't make any sense. And this is the best that they've got to wheel out Grant Shapps telling lies about Boris Johnson's late mum. Imagine the depths you would have to go to lie about someone's mum passing away. Probably one of the hardest things you can deal with. And you've got this from Sima Kotecha saying Chris Mason, she's citing her friend Chris Mason, colleague, saying he's learned a few things about a picture gathering exposed by ITV News. The Prime Minister instigated it. The Prime Minister was there for 10 minutes and then left. Someone who attended has been fined. So we know it was a party. Chris says he was told the above by someone who attended the leaving do. Essentially someone who's very annoyed. Someone who's very annoyed that Boris Johnson was not fined, and that person was. This is from Stephen Swinford. Boris Johnson suggested Sue Gray should drop her full report given the police investigation during a secret meeting earlier this month. The Times have been told. He's said to have asked her whether there's much point in publishing it given it's all out there. And Boris Johnson struggled to deny that in number 10, PMQs yesterday. You've got this from Ava Santina saying, gosh, former Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Met has just told LBC the force might not have investigated Partygate as hard as they should have done in order to avoid upsetting number 10. So essentially the Met Police did this because ultimately the Home Office have a lot of control over the Met Police, as does Parliament. That's the reason why the Met Police refuse to deal with the Met Police refuse to deal with the Parliament, because their relationship is symbiotic. That's something I've talked about over the last probably year, really. They need each other. They coexist together. One will not do anything to the other to jeopardise it, because that's how desperate they are to protect each other. You've got this from, what's her name, Laura Koonsberg, who actually does an okay job, but then apparently says Boris Johnson, at the end of the Panorama documentary, he's one of the most gifted politicians currently. I'm just like, what are you talking about? Are you insane? But yeah, this is decent work from her.
Lee Kane's leaving do. Can you just tell us what happened at that event?
There was about 30 people, if not more, in a room. Everyone was stood shoulder to shoulder. Some people on each other's laps.
People were sitting on each other's laps?
Yes, 1 or 2 people. They were every week. The event invites for Friday press office drinks were just nailed into the diary.
There were actually invites. There was a weekly regular invite to press office drinks on Friday nights.
Yes, Wine Time Fridays. Invites that were in everyone's calendar for every Friday at 4 p.m.
So this is obviously from the top down. If it's in everyone's calendar, most likely they would have a digital calendar. So If that was the case, surely those invites should still be there unless someone somehow scrubbed all of them. But it was every week. That means the lockdown breaking was every week. It happened. Crazy.
4 o'clock in the afternoon.
You know, they were working so hard, they clocked off at 4 p.m. The normal working day is 9 to 5. Some people work 9 to 6. Some people 8 to 6. 4 p.m. they clocked off. That's how hard they were working. 4 p.m.
It was wine time.
Yes.
So to be really clear about this, you and your colleagues felt that you had essentially permission from Boris Johnson to have these events. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because
He was there. He may have just been popping through on the way to his flat because that's what would happen. You know, he wasn't there saying this shouldn't be happening. He wasn't saying, can everyone break up and go home? Can everyone socially distance? Can everyone put masks on? No, he wasn't telling anybody that. He was grabbing a glass for himself.
So he allowed it, you know, maybe not explicitly, but implicitly. By him being there, by him seeing these events and not saying anything, he allowed it to happen. And I asked the question, which other Prime Minister would allow this?
His principal private secretary himself was organising. His staff were organising parties.
And ironically, they should have been hit with the £10,000 fines then. You know, the really big ones for the ones who organised it. But they weren't.
so when you and your colleagues in government saw Boris Johnson say none of the rules had been broken,
We were watching it all live and we just sort of looked at each other in disbelief, like, why? Why is he denying this? When we've been with him this entire time, we knew that the rules had been broken. We knew these parties happened.
A lot of these young members of staff from across Downing Street who have been fined feel that they went to these events. They did not think they were breaking the rules at the time because the Prime Minister was at them.
It doesn't matter if the Prime Minister was at them. You should have known the rules.
He stood up in the House of Commons and essentially implied he'd been misled by some really very junior people whose job it would not be to police these events. And then they've been subject to this witch hunt to, you know, find them.
And, you know, the simple fact is, once that Parliamentary Privileges Committee gets set up, right, once they start talking to Boris Johnson, these two people here should go in front of that committee and say exactly what they've said here, that Boris Johnson saw these events and knew they were breaching the lockdown rules. That's what has to happen now. We've got this from Mark Harper saying, you know, he's tired of his colleagues having to defend the indefensible when no one's forcing them to do that. If they didn't want to defend Boris Johnson, they could resign from cabinet, they could resign from the party. They have options. They don't have to do this. They can stop this now if they want to. They don't have to be the ones that constantly go on TV. They can cross the House if they want. They can go independent. Maybe they'll be sacrificing their parliamentary careers, but if this means that much to them, they should leave. People like Mark Harper should leave the party if they're so annoyed about this. Because Boris Johnson's not going to change. The only way you get rid of him is through a leadership contest. That's not going to happen. Because Boris Johnson's intent on killing the party. If he goes, the party goes with him.
That event, I understand there's at least one person at that event that has been fined for attending. So
we
it was an
understand that
unlawful
too.
gathering.
That seems to be the case, yes. One person at this event was fined, and it's not this clown here.
And the Prime Minister, however long he was at it, should have sent everyone home. But the thing is, it's not just the events, it's the fact that he's not been straightforward about it. I mean, you were on television on Sunday, Joe. You couldn't get a straight answer out of a Cabinet Minister about whether a meeting happened and who called a meeting between the Prime Minister and Sue Gray. They're not being straight about it. And I'm fed up, and I said this in the House of Commons, with my colleagues, a number of decent men and women who are being asked to go out on the television day after day and saying things that are frankly ridiculous and defending the indefensible. Well, that's not what a leader should do. When the Prime Minister gets asked about these things on television, he says he can't talk about them until Sue Gray comes out. And yet ministers are sent out every day to frankly have to just defend things that are, as I said, aren't defensible.
Yeah, they do that every day.
And not being straight with people is a real problem. And that's why I said to the Prime Minister that I felt he wasn't worthy of his office and he should go. And I said that when he'd been found guilty of breaking the law, and I felt not being straight with people, and I stick to that view, and I think everything that's happened since supports it. My colleagues this week, when Sue Gray's report's published, we think tomorrow, are going to have to make their decision about whether they're...
And the simple fact is, if he's not going to go, if you can't convince your colleagues to vote him out, what kind of integrity do you have if you won't leave the party? What you know, this is ridiculous at this point. These people who pretend to have honour have none. You know, he's fed up with it. Do something then. You know, convince your colleagues. You've got this joker, Ben Bradshaw, a Labour guy, saying, apologies to my constituencies who may have wished me to be in the chamber. This was yesterday. I couldn't be in the same physical space as this man and the craven Tory MPs keeping him there. I mean, bro, you're on 80 plus £1,000 a year. You should be in there. You should be holding the Prime Minister accountable. Like, honestly, it's comedy hour at this point. You've got Tom Tugendhat telling Times Radio that he is talking to colleagues about the Prime Minister's position today, adding that this is a time for all of us to look at what this country needs, and we should be pretty ruthless in our views, because the Tory party is ruthless. Once Boris Johnson is no longer an electoral asset, they'll get rid of him. The problem is, what if in the midst of them trying to do this, he just says there's going to be a general election this year, and he tries to force one through? That's a key problem. You've got, you know, Grant Shapps saying he walks down, he says cheers to somebody who has worked there and walks out, and to him that's not a party. He was there for 10 minutes. So that's not even true. Grant Shapps is blatantly lying there. So now this is a philosophical debate about the nature of a party. It's not about parties though. It's about gatherings. Was it necessary for work? He said people who were at the party dispute number 10 in Shapps' line of defence. They say the Prime Minister gathered everyone there, gave a speech, told everyone to pour a drink, and mingled for 20 to 25 minutes. So the person who had told Chris Mason from earlier, saying Boris Johnson was there for 10 minutes, actually he was there for 20 to 25 minutes. Wild stuff. We go to part of the Sue Gray report I want to talk about, which is the event started, so this was one of the events, started at 6 p.m. on the 27th of November in the area just outside the number 10 press office. The investigation was informed that this was an extension of the type of award ceremony that might take place on Wine Time Fridays. So this is an extension of already potential rule breaking on Fridays. So this started at 6 p.m, right? At approximately 7:45, a panic alarm button was accidentally pressed. The custodian and one of the police officers at the number 10 door on duty went to see what was going on. So the police were obviously aware this was going on because they went in and saw this. They observed a large number of people in the area for the main press office and one individual giving a speech. Surely that police officer should have asked, what the hell's going on here? This does not look like a work event. 15 to 20 people were present. There was food and alcohol present, which had been brought in by staff. Some staff drank excessively. The event was crowded and noisy. Some people were apparently sitting on each other's laps. I don't know if this was at this event or a different one. A cleaner who attended the room the next morning noted that there had been red wine spilled on one wall and a number of boxes of photocopier paper. Surely that, you know, how much alcohol do you have to drink for it to not be relevant for work? It's ridiculous. The event lasted for several hours, and the exit logs show that the number of staff were there until after midnight. Sounds like a work event. And surely Boris Johnson being just next door, these would have been one of the loud events as well. He should have told them to go home. He should have told them to go home. You know, this is not necessary for work at all. And then we find out, oh, what's this? Announced today on the 26th of May. Energy bills to be cut. Sunax going to finally do the windfall tax Labour have been pushing him for. He's waited for this long to do this. Why? Because they need a new talking point now. They're going to say, we need to move on. We're going to do the levy on excess profits, or whatever the hell he's called it. I mean, it's just madness. Honestly, it's just wild at this time, and it's time. This guy needs to go. Johnson, he has to go, and I don't say this lightly, but you know, you need to fall behind the parties that can actually get rid of him. You know, regardless of what I think of Starmer at this point, I don't like him. I don't. But the problem is, you know, we have to do what they didn't do, the centrists didn't do in 2019, which is fall in line now, back him as best we can, because so much hardship has gone on. So many people live in fuel poverty. Labour need to be more ambitious. The Lib Dems need to be more ambitious on policy. But we have to get rid of this joker now. You have to get rid of Johnson. He's holding back policies that are half-baked, in a sense, in order to use them as political diversions from scandals. That's what he's done here, because he's waited this long to announce this windfall tax. Why has he done this? Because he needed a new headline after the Sue Gray report. That's why he waited. A Labour Party have to be ambitious. They have to inspire people, but we need this guy to go. and I'm seriously, I'm just ticked off at this point. It's time to get organised. It's time for the parties to get organised and start figuring out what they can do to get rid of as many Tories as possible electorally. That's what has to happen now, because this can't go on much longer. I don't know what when the breaking point hits where people just can't afford to live. I don't know when, you know, people's houses start getting repossessed more and more. People get kicked out of rented accommodation. I don't know where this ends. We're heading towards a recession at the end of the year. Yeah, apparently we're the fastest growing economy in the G7. We've got the highest inflation out of any G7 countries. But yeah, I'm just ticked off at this moment. It's time to get organised. If you're not part of a union, you should probably join one. You should think about it at least, because you know the only way you're going to get better pay now is to fight for it. That's it. You know, and stories of people, you know, certain employers lying to people about pay offers that were meant to pay increases that were meant to happen but didn't, and yeah, this is just becoming very, very ugly, very ugly, and yeah, I'm just getting bored of this. So hopefully, the Labour Party and the Lib Dems and the SNP, the Greens, whoever else, Plaid Cymru, all the other parties get together and just say, look, we need to put our differences aside. We have to get rid of Johnson, and then after that, we have to move to a PR system. This cannot be allowed to happen. We cannot allow the Tories to keep holding this country to ransom, because at the end of the day, the broad church of the two main political parties is dying. You can see in the Tory party, Johnson's got rid of a load of the more centre-right politicians, the pro-EU politicians, and what we've been left with are the biggest group of idiots I've ever seen. Honestly, I mean, the only probably one of the few political parties that are probably more stupid than the Conservative Party now are probably the Republican Party in America, and maybe the Democratic National Party. That's it. I can't think of too many more parties in charge of their, you know, in the Western world at least, in charge of the countries that are more stupid than this lot in charge. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there before I lose it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.